Welcome to BizBody, where we talk about the art and science of exercise to help you solve movement and pain problems.
So you got to be able to take in stimuli, react to it, and then be able to move about. If you can't do it, then people are in real trouble.
Yeah, I mean, and piggybacking off of that, and like every injury that you have, from the time that you were born until the current day, you're continually still managing. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't, as much as we've, seen over the last, 13, 14 years, like none of that stuff really truly goes away. You just learn to manage it. You break your bone, it heals, you're great. And it's just like it was before, but it's really not.
Really not.
Like, in the idea that we can do these random things and these random things will just make everything magically get better is just crazy. We both come from strength backgrounds where, like when we were more strength coaches, it was always, hey, if you just get it stronger, it'll get better, right? Well, by the time I got out of college, like I was dealing with 2 crappy knees, jacked up shoulder, my elbow was reconstructed, but I was strong as hell. Like, I could do things that most people would be like, man, you're in really good shape. Like, you can squat over 400 pounds, like you have a really high bench, you can do X, Y, and Z, but I felt like crap all the time.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like that continuing, like, okay, how strong do I have to be? Like, what's that marker that I need to get to before I start feeling better, right? And it's like, I just, and that's honestly like kind of what led us to this whole place that we're at now is like, you were the same way. It's like, you were extremely strong, comparatively speaking, like when we talk about like these ideas of strength, right? And these challenges of strength.
Like traditional, right? Like exercise strength, these ideals of strength, like how they're, or power, right? And the fixation on fast twitch motor units or type 2 motor units in aging. Like, you got to hold on to these fast twitch motor units as you age, regardless of orthopedic status, which I just don't believe anymore, which I always think was the holy grail of longevity, was like, if you don't have this ability to exert maximal force or maximal power, that's what ages us. But if we look at the history of mankind, people that were doing high leverage strength stuff, they don't have a long lifespan. Like a lot of those, like real strong men, they don't live very long. And then if you look at people that have done really hard physical labor, a lot of their joints wear out. We're talking like people that work farming, like in fields, really hard. People that are working in manufacturing, like my uncle used to work, slung a sledge for a while to knock out bathtubs out of cast iron molds. They had certain jobs, like, well, that's the back job. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Well, that's the one where your back will last about 10 years and it's done. Right? And you got to get a new person in there because they're worn out. What is the traditional means of control and strength towards the long-term vision of, oh, I want to be able to sustain this for as long as I'm expecting to be alive, to do the things that I want to do. Like, what's a true measure of strength then? Or should I say, what's a true measure of force in a configuration under load, right? Mm-hmm. Which is how many different ways can you load a human? It's mind-bending of how many ways that's possible and how that can be attributed to, well, if I couldn't do that because all of a sudden I realized I couldn't do that, now I'm not feeling so good. Right. But now I know I can do it. Well, how do I progress that so I know I can do that, which is the quality aspect. It's like, how does somebody even know that it's even better for them?
Right.
So it's crazy, like all of a sudden they just know. It's like, oh, that really helped. How all of a sudden it's like instantaneously that they do a specific thing and they just feel better. That blows my mind that's even possible.
Well, I mean, it goes back to the whole idea of like, the thing that pops up a lot is like, everything's connected, right? Like, a lot of people would agree, like, oh, it's all interconnected. Like that gets thrown around all the time, whether
Right.
it be like clients or other practitioners, until you're that person. Until you're that person that comes in with shoulder pain, and through a diagnostic check of your body, we determine, oh, well, you actually have some really bad control in this left foot that you just can't seem to move here or there, control this. And I think that's having a profound effect on your shoulder. But I didn't come in for the foot. I came in for the shoulder. Right? So everybody believes everything's connected until it's them. And then it's like, okay, but what's the type of system you have in place to be able to then tell that person or explain to that person how that potentially is connected to their shoulder?
Right.
And the fact that if we do truly believe that everything's connected, that then if I elicit more control out of your ankle or foot, that you can move better, you can control better under load, and somehow magically your shoulder feels better, is that really magic?
And is that okay?
No, it's not magic.
It's like, is it okay for that person that you didn't work on their shoulder too?
Right.
Yeah, that gets right back to the idea of what we're defining, which is this qualitative, quantitative look at the human system and what had happened in the past and how it controls itself. Because we're not saying that the ankle is going to be the only piece of this puzzle that helps the whole system feel better. We're saying that there are multiple opportunities all over the body that are not equal in nature of how someone's system, someone's body has then acquired trauma and or has learned how to move about the environment through the lifetime of your body. So it's like that really freaking matters. And that's why it's like when even in the definition in Webster, which is the activity requiring physical effort carried out to sustain or improve health and fitness. The definition of activity, a thing that a person or group has done. I mean, it's very general, right? And that reminds me of pastimes. And they use activity in pastimes. An activity that someone does regularly for enjoyment rather than work. And that reminds me of games, a form of play or sport, especially a competitive one played according to rules and decided by skill, strength, or luck. Play, because play is a part of that as well, engage in activity for enjoyment and recreation rather than serious or practical purpose. So when we're talking about exercise in itself, it's so people can enjoy their activities, enjoy their pastimes, enjoy their game, that they can play. There is a form of play in exercise when it comes to qualitative measures, which is there is constant questioning of what somebody actually enjoys or gravitates to because they're the only person that will ever know that. And that's why we're asking questions of that along the way in real time, formulating solutions. And yes, we have a plan. The whole point is the plan can change depending upon what someone's quality is moving forward, because if we're doing something and their system really doesn't like it because they're exhibiting pain or they're exhibiting a lack of control, being like their output goes down, their ability to control range of motion goes down, why would I keep doing that same thing? Why wouldn't I change the stimulus for a better adaptation?
And I think, again, it all comes down to what you want to get out of this, right? Like, do you want to do something where you can shut your brain off and just like cross your fingers that it works for you? Or do you want to have something where you have somebody who is a very good observer of what's currently happening and is able to adapt based on your reactions to each stimuli, right?
Right.
In a positive way, right? Because the other flip side of that coin is we can set up a challenge to an individual where there's a negative outcome, right? And do you continue to go down that path and make that person feel worse in the overall guides of, oh, I know if they get to a certain point, it will feel better.
Right.
Or are you capable enough to be able to say, you know what, like this person at this given time can't tolerate this challenge. I'm going to do X, Y, or Z instead.
Yeah.
Now, I may be able to come back and use that thing as a litmus test of the next thing that I go through. Can I control it? And then can I go back?
Am I going to stack challenges? Like say someone has trouble with controlling knee extension, right? So we're practicing knee extension. Like what if knee extension on the same side, someone had a repeated ankle sprain. So it's like now, like their foot has trouble going through plantar flexion, like going down. So what if we combine those? Would there be a lack of knee control or hip control or other side control? Because if it's all connected, how deep does this rabbit hole go of control? And that's what's really fun with that, is like flushing out anything local that could also be systemic based upon its priority for that person. You're listening to this and you're like, well, I need someone else to guide me through that. You don't necessarily need that right off the bat. You can empower yourself, and we'll have a whole separate link in the show notes for this, where we have a simple Google Doc that is like, do maybe 1 or 2 reps on one leg of one type of exercise. Be present when you do it. Start light, start controlled. Do a couple reps on the other leg, and then do the same thing for one arm and then the other arm. And you keep going through each one of these combinations just so you're aware of how you're controlling something and how does it feel. And if you start light and slow, chances are you're going to be a lot better than stacking it really heavy, because you can do this on a machine, you can do this with a dumbbell, like whatever's easiest, and then start the process of realizing what you're having trouble controlling, and also the quality. How did it resonate with you? Did it remind you of a specific injury? Did it feel way different on one side than it did on the other? And then once you start training it, it's like, boy, this one did like half of what this one did at this weight. Like, what's going on with that? I can't do anymore. And my leg's shaking and my neck hurts. Mm-hmm. Weird. So like, this is all something that you can utilize right now.
What's crazy when you start to mess with that stuff is you'll start to feel things that you didn't notice before because you just weren't tuned in, right? And I think the thing that I'm always reminded of is, you know, when we were in our old place and we had this like Kaiser adduction machine, right? Like where your legs come in, right? And the resistance is in. So like you literally should feel it on the inside of your legs.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically having a client that was like, every time I do this, I feel the outside of my hip. And it's like, how is that even humanly possible? Like, and just not
she
like,
made it happen.
Yeah, just not understanding like why this is happening. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you like, we spent hours on that machine trying to replicate. Mm-hmm. How is she feeling this? Like, until we finally like, oh, just the way she was shoving into the machine with that one leg was creating forces that, holy crap, I do feel that on the outside of my, now I understand how she's doing that, right? And it's just little things, subtle things that you may not understand what you're doing, right? Or, you know, just different sensations where it's like, yeah, you do chest press on one side and you feel it in your pec. You do chest press on the other, you don't feel it in your pec at all.
Right.
That's weird.
Right.
Like same motion, same exercise, just a different limb, and you have completely different sensations.
Right. There's all these different activities that people are doing, which are very beneficial socially. They're moving about their environment. It's when you want a process to know what may be difficult to control so that you can watch yourself progress incrementally and have that transfer to the things that you love. That's exactly what we're talking about. There's no good and bad, only if you feel like every time you're doing something, you constantly feel more unhealthy and less able to move. That's a problem. And we're hoping that as we talk about these concepts, that you utilize these concepts rather than thinking, I'm not really a weightlifting person. Well, this has nothing to do with the marketing term of lifting weights and or strength and development. This has everything to do with, if you raise your arm up and your leg up, in any form, way, you're lifting the weight of your leg, you're lifting the weight of your arm, right? It is how people move about their environment. And if you're having trouble with just your arm's too heavy in the context of how you're trying to move about your environment. If you have no way to parse out what could actually help that, there's going to be problems. And why we're working towards defining this idea of exercise is so that it becomes, number one, less scary. These marketing terms start to go away when it comes towards exercise, because like the idea of bodybuilding, Pilates, spin class, the idea, like they're all just these marketing terms, so people feel all happy about less strategic in the way that they're loading their system when they think they're being strategic, but there's not really a whole lot of physics and physiology involved with it. Instead of, oh no, this is the definition of a force, right? Here's the definition of how we're going to apply that. Here's the definition of recovery. And here's how we're defining that. And here are the rules that we're going to set up for that, so we can see your progress piece by piece, rather than the joke that we made before. It's like, well, you can't run anymore because you wore yourself out running, so you switch to biking. And then all of a sudden you can't bike anymore. You can do your spin class things. So now you switch to swimming. And then your shoulders hurt, so now you can't swim. So now you're kind of screwed.
Wheelchair.
You're kind of screwed. So it's like everybody needs coordination and muscle to move about their environment. Calling it what it is, which is just coordination under load, that is exercise. And however anyone else wants to market it, I just think it's crap. I think the marketing terms in itself are hurting in dividing people within the industry and still living in the land of make-believe, rather than, no, these things are really happening because it's motor learning under a load, whether you call it spin class or not, right? But like when people don't want to learn about it that are actually in this industry, it's taking the whole medicinal side of exercise and throwing it out the window.
And again, just going back to the marketing terms, it's like, it's just a ploy to get a certain type of individual in a certain type of class or environment, right? It's like, if I'm an individual that owns, an exercise facility, and I want people coming in and lifting heavy weights and grunting, and there's chalk everywhere, and barbells are hitting the floor really hard, like, I might call it Brandon's powerlifting gym, right? But if I'm somebody else that wants to acquire people and individuals that want to come in and want long, lean muscle and want to be able to breathe through this and that, I might call it Brandon's yoga facility. But what we're getting at is, it's all exercise, just wrapped up in a different marketing term, trying to get a certain type of individual to come in, probably that individual more like us, right? And like who we are and our beliefs, but it has nothing to do with the individual as a human being when they walk through, because everybody does the same,
They're doing the same
exercises,
thing.
right? Like, irregardless of medical history, disease state, age, all these things that play a huge factor in your ability to do or not do things. And that's exactly how people get hurt.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because nobody gets into the exercise industry. Like, I don't know of any individual that owns a yoga, Pilates, CrossFit, powerlifting gym that gets into the business to hurt people.
Right.
Nobody's out here trying to hurt people, but it happens.
It happens.
And it shouldn't. It should never happen, right? It's like that whole idea of like, do no harm, right? Like, and again, unless you're taking steps to make sure the individuals that walk through your door are in the best possible position to not get hurt, by making sure that they're qualified to do the things you're asking them to do, there's got to be systems in place, right? And that's just what we're talking about here, is like just getting really like crunched down on what is good for you, right? Like, nothing in and of itself is bad, but it could be bad for you, the individual. Might not be bad for me, might not be bad for Keith, but it might be bad for you based on your medical history, your previous injury history, where you're currently at. Like, all those factors play a role, right? Which is why there's no one size fits all.
What is exercise in the entertainment / activity continuum, which is there are some things that are closer to what we call and define as exercise, which is people that are trying to set up strategic challenges to create a strategic specific adaptation, and they're actually looking at, okay, did those changes occur over time, and are they in alignment with the changes that I want to see happen? And if those are happening, then I would label that as exercise. If it is, I'm turning my brain off and I'm just going, or there's a different version of that where, I am engaged and I'm just really working hard in order to work hard, great. That's awesome. There are these different parts of the continuum that you can use to your advantage. If someone is not feeling how they want to feel, then maybe take an approach where you're getting granular with it to find out what may be helping and what may be hurting, so that you have a route and autonomy to keep moving and have that movement optimism in order to figure out, at least starting to figure out for yourself, the things that help and the things that do not. So, because many people, what they do is they'll be in pain and they're so frustrated they just quit. They just stop. And I don't know if you guys recognize this as well, but America isn't getting any healthier right now. America is actually getting a lot more unhealthy. How would exercise fit in that continuum? This could be a lot more specific, and it could be a lot easier. Like, things could just be so much easier for you, where no real huge commitments to large classes, to a whole lot of other people. But then eventually, if you want to take it in a direction where you want to explore something, explore dance, explore Pilates, explore weightlifting, explore whatever, it's like, cool, now you're ready to do these things because you know how those challenges and that control has affected your entire body and how you recover from it. So guys, I want you to thank you again for tuning in to BizBody. I'm Keith.
I'm Brandon.
See you next time.
Thank you all for listening to the BizBody podcast. If this has helped you, share with anyone who would benefit. You can also subscribe to the show. Brandon and I are both exercise coaches at Body Activation, where we work one-on-one with active people who manage chronic problems. Check us out at body-activation.com for more.